looking at VR, I feel like if you're here today, you know what VR is, or you're interested in VR. VR is a virtual world that we can access using an external headset, like the one you see here in the photo. And that allows you to be fully immersed in an environment where you can fully interact with what is around you. One thing that is amazing of VR is the fact that you can use it as a tool for your classroom to do things that you couldn't do in real life, either because maybe you don't have the space to bring, I don't know, a car engine to your classroom, or in VR, students can jump off a cliff, they can deactivate a bomb. And so whenever we use VR, we always want to think to the fact that you can do so much more, and then it should be used as a tool to enhance the experience. And so kind of providing a third classroom, if that makes sense, a third space for your students, for your experience. The first thing that is really important that I always say whenever I'm talking to people about VR and sharing our experience is that you need to know what is available around you, right? We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to waste time. And so looking at what do you have that you can already use? Are headsets available, and what are they? Are there 360 cameras that you can use for, I don't know, a 360 tour of your campus, for example? In our case, when we started back in 2022, our language our language the language lab had bought some MetaQuest 2 headsets that we used at the beginning. But then the university opened an emerging technology studio, which is the one here in the photo, that has a wide variety of headsets and a space where the students can be supported whenever, and also, I mean, instructors can be supported if they want to create activities, if they want to use that space as an educational space. And so I'd say just look around and see what is that is already there for you. Recycle, I think, is the most important thing, so that you don't have to start something from scratch unless you want to. You will see that we did end up creating things from scratch because this is what was something that I wanted to do. But it is time consuming, and you wanna see if that is really where you wanna go. So step one, look around you and see what is available. Also, when looking at at VR, it is important to know that it does have positive effect. Looking at the research, we know that because of its immersive and kinesthetic component, VR is good for all learning styles. Research says that it provides improved motivation and mood, helps with memorization, not only with the lexicon, but also in those subjects where there is the need for a practical use of the hands, and also for what we see, for example, in anatomy, looking at the heart, or as I said, for a car, the engine, etc. So knowing that you can manipulate the objects that are with you is something that is positive in using VR. When we look at the language classroom, but I would say in general, right, sometimes we struggle to have students speaking and interacting. VR helps with improving the oral interaction. So students do speak more when they are in VR, and that is due to the lowering of the affective filter. Students feel less self-aware, and so they do speak more. And then, of course, problem-solving skills. Students do learn how to find alternative ways. When I was thinking of a project for my specific dissertation, I was looking at what is available. And as I said, it is always important to see if there are tools that you can already use. In my case, what I noticed was that the existing platforms that focus on language, they do focus on preset dialogues, and the tools, the objects that are there. It's true, you can use them, you can hold something, let go, but they are not really connected to the actual goal of the lesson. And these activities are fun for the students, but I wanted something that was really also helpful for them. I think sometimes as educator, we tend to use new technologies because they provide an alternative, because they're fun, but it's important to know that it does come with, a cost in time and energy. So it's important that, yes, we use VR as a fun tool, but also making sure that it serves us the good purpose, that students are learning more, that students feel like their tool belt is richer, right? And so in my case, I was thinking of how can I align what I know that works in VR with what I know that works in the actual classroom. And that connects to the next step, right? What is that I want to create? What is the experience I want my students to have? And so that is connected to the idea of creating a narrative for the VR experience. The first step, in my opinion, is looking at the topic. But thinking of a topic is not just, come up with a topic, but look at what do your students need? What is something that they can do, that they need to do that they cannot do with the tools they have in the classroom? Let's use VR because it offers something more rather than instead of doing something that you can already do in your classroom. Sometimes having pen and paper, it's way faster. So let's make sure it is something that is really experiential for them. Then, of course, considering time and space constraints. How much time do I have? How much time can my students stay in VR? How much time can I use this classroom? Because the truth is that whenever you use a new technology, there are things that can go wrong. And so time flies, right? And also what kind of support I have. Do I have the tech help that Samanta has at OSU? Do I have, is the room safe for students? Do I want students to stay seated at all time, just in case? And then remembering that using VR comes with a high possibility of cyber sickness. When we started 4 years ago with the MetaQuest 2, students experienced cyber sickness pretty often. I have to say that with the new model, the MetaQuest 3, students have been, providing very positive feedback because it's lighter, and it does not trigger migraine and nausea so much. And also students can be in the MetaQuest 3 headsets for longer compared to the MetaQuest 2. And then we start with the fun part, right? The hands-on part, which is the prototyping. Whenever we talk about prototyping, we are referring to the need of storyboarding, like creating an idea of what you want your story to look like, right? So it's really like just being there and writing and sketching, and then beta testing. In our case, beta testing was the longest because we had a lot of things that we wanted to improve, but also technology was catching up with our needs, with my desires. And so it started with things that we didn't even think were possible, finishing with so many more that we were able to add that I'm so happy I was able to add. And then, of course, always thinking of a non-tech, non-immersive alternative. In my case, for my dissertation, it was thinking of pen and paper alternatives. What if a student gets sick and he or she doesn't want to do that activity anymore? And so when I thought of a topic that was important for my students, that would use the capability of VR, that would be fun, and that could provide with an easy non-technological activity alternative, I thought of the escape rooms. When I started prototyping them, I used Sketchfab, which is a tool for interior designing. And then I moved everything to PowerPoint. You can also use, normal pen and paper. It is totally fine. My idea was, why don't I come up with a way that my students can learn how to give and follow commands, practicing the imperative in Italian. How can I do it in a fun way? Because the truth is, we use the imperative all the time in the classroom, right? Do this, do that. But I wanted them to be able to move, to jump, to do things. And so VR helped me to do that in a safe way. In my case, as I said, I used this tool that is Sketchfab. I paid for it with a subscription. But the truth is that there are other ways, especially now with AI. And I want to share with you another tool that I've been using lately, and I've had so much fun, which is Gemini and Notebook LM. So if you have a Gmail account, it is already there and available. And I've been liking it because you can use it for storyboarding. So if you're not good at drawing, or you don't want to buy a subscription as I did, that is really nice. But also, it allows you to create videos, even graphic novels. I was actually using it yesterday to create graphic novels for my Italian classroom with a study abroad experience, and it was so much fun. And then it does allow for a variety of styles, so it is very nice. I will very quickly show you how you can do that using Gemini and Notebook LM, and then we will move to the actual escape room that I want to show you. In the case of Gemini, and you can go ahead, you can start, using it. If you have your Gmail account, you will find it. And as you see over here near my photo, you see there are those 4 dots. You click on those and you go down to Gemini. Gemini will be used just to create the script, but also to brainstorm ideas. But then Notebook LM is the one creating the actual images and creating the storyboard. In my case, I even asked to create a PowerPoint presentation that I then downloaded, and I have it on my desktop. So if you look at Gemini, I think some of the steps that are really important are making sure we are always precise. In my case, in the instructions I gave, I made sure that it was for students at the elementary level. In your case, you will think, students that are not yet familiar, I don't know, with biology or with these engineering topic, right? And then what is the actual topic, being very specific. You can ask many things, right? It's the same as if you have ever used ChatGPT or other AI tools. The idea is you can ask to brainstorm scenarios. Like in my case, I asked, can you give me ideas on various scenarios for escape rooms in Italian, using a variety of verbs and lexicon words. Then it can also create a list of commands and lexicon. And also I can ask it to craft, and then I will ask to craft the narrative arc that I can use for Notebook LM. All of these things, so the list of lexicon, the list of commands, the narrative arc, the scenarios, I can copy and save them as files that I will then upload to Notebook LM. In my case here in this slide, you will see I gave you an example of the command that I gave the Gemini, and also the checklist, the lexicon checklist that Gemini provided to me. Then when you move to Notebook LM, I really like it because the way it works is it allows you to add the sources And so there is a left panel that allows you to, you can copy and paste, but for some reason it works best for me when I upload the file. And then you start talking to it, same as you do with Gemini. And in my case, I asked to transform the uploaded script into a visual map that I could use to create VR spaces, or also transform the uploaded script into a storyboard that I could use as a model. And I was specific. I asked to create a high fidelity visual in the sketch style. And I wanted the riddles. I did include some riddles like, to find this, you got to go here. So that students were kind of like doing the game of finding the key and getting out of the room, opening the door. It is really important to always review what has been generated. I found a lot of grammar and cultural inconsistencies, so always make sure you go back and check it. And then you start creating your, whatever you are generating. In my case, I wanted to create an image and some slides. So when we use Notebook LM, you can also create a podcast and a video overview with a narrated presentation. So I find it very helpful and very nice as well. So this is the visual that I had. I have to say I like it way more than what I had created with Sketchfab. Also, this was free. And then you have, space to ask things to be moved, etc. This really took me like a minute. And I like the idea that it also provides some of the words. Because, for example, in my case, I was the one designing, but Kevin was the one creating the actual virtual spaces. And so for him also to know what those words are, I found it was really, really nice. And then the next one that I want to show you is I asked Notebook LM to create kind of like a real step-by-step with goals. And I think the visual is amazing. I mean, I'm thinking of this could be printed and become a booklet for students to, go on a mission and know what they need to do. And you can even ask if you are, as in my case, in the languages, it could even create visuals for when we use the imperative, what are the words, what is the goal? And so I think it does such a great job in doing things that are even, visually very, very appealing, and so good for students. And the time it took for me to create this was way less than it took me to create the actual template when I did it years ago with the other tools. And now let's go to the actual escape rooms. I want to show you what we created in VR, what I designed, but Kevin created in VR. The goal was that both students were immersed in virtual environments. Let me show you. So the one that is starting is student A, which was the guide, and he was immersed in the virtual space and had a map over here and was giving the commands based on the map. And then student B over here is actually the student who was trapped and had to find the way out. And so I know you cannot hear the audio, but they are actually speaking a lot in the target language. And so I just wanted to show you how it looks for both of them to be immersed, either as the guide or as the hostage. And whenever they would touch a trigger point, the trigger point would activate an alarm. And that is it. I think now it is Kevin's turn.
So I'm here to talk about sort of like how to kind of create some of the items. So one thing you might have noticed with our escape room, we were really limited at that time to relying on assets we could find either on Sketchfab or through the Unity Asset Store or through sort of the Humble Bundle purchases. And that it's kind of clunky and it doesn't always give you the cultural artifacts that you really want. And so that's changed though. I started working with Meshi just a little bit ago, probably about over a year, right? So I was trying to get this to create objects that we could use in Unity all the way back then, but it wasn't the best at the time. But I did develop a workflow that still pretty much can work today. Uh, it is you take an image, just find some type of source image, and then you would feed that image into Gemini. Ask Gemini to create a low poly isometric image of that, so you kind of get more of an angle where it can imagine, where Meshi can imagine the different sides that are there. Uh, and to even maybe make it even a little bit better now, you could use something like Google Flow. I really like that because the image generation is free. You can use the Pro version for free if it's just images, because it's a lab and it's actually for video. You can generate 4 images at a time and then choose the image that you like, right? And then download that. And then you can feed that into Meshi, which then either you're text prompting to 3D objects, which doesn't really work out. It becomes more fantastic looking, or you actually take the actual image or the modified low poly image that you work through Gemini or Google Flow to then generate sort of a really good object. Now, that's sort of the workflow. And so this is what Gemini produced. It had like a little bit too much there, so I had to modify it a little bit, ask for it to get rid of the other buildings, ask for it to get rid of the trees, and then we end up with that. I noticed the shadow, asked to get rid of the shadow. And so we have then a sort of an isometric image that we could feed in, and it could probably interpret that pretty well. Now, uh, where is it? Okay, so this is what it came up with. And you can notice it actually it really did something well. It got the Berlin Bear on the flag pretty well. I was impressed with that. But you can see it sort of looks a little bit claymation, and that's still a problem. So sometimes you need to then put it into Blender. There's a thing called a bridge. It's very simple to set up. You just click on something and you allow your Blender, which is a 3D sculpting software, which is free, to download the images from, or download the sculpts or the models from Meshi. But I actually found something that was much better. So this was sort of the low poly version of that. Let me just share real quick. Well, I guess I can do that. I can show you then sort of like where we're at with Meshi. So if we're doing Meshi, so this is sort of like the output that you get, but that you'd have to clean up. And there's little tutorials on how to clean it up. I just don't find that it's producing as good of a model as a different one. You can also, if I'm sure focusing on buildings here because of the next slide, which is to recreate sort of spaces, but you can also do that with objects. So I tried to get it to recreate a radiator. I asked it for an Italian old school radiator, and it had problems. See, like here at the top, it couldn't really do it. There's a better model out there. And so I started using this one. It just made a 3D version. I just put this in when I saw Samantha. This is the first time I saw Samantha using this image. So I put it in so it could actually recreate a three-dimensional space from that image you generated with Notebook LM. And that could be, that could get you a good start. But I also had that image of the radiator put in, and this is low poly, right? So it's under 5,000 triangles. Low poly is typically 0 to 10,000 triangles. And that's what we want for web development or development on our mobile headsets. If you're using a PC, then you could go for HD or whatever. It just depends on how powerful your machine is. But look at that. That's a very good outcome. And then, of course, I also fed the building in there, and it's just it's night and day. Look at the details that you get from this model as opposed to Meshi, and this is Tripo, so it's much faster. I would recommend using that over Meshi now, which I for a long time that was the only thing that you could really use. The other thing is like, say you want to create sort of an authentic space. Well, it can be easier than you think. There is software for Unity. It's a bit older now, but it gives you a really good blueprint, and it auto populates. What it does basically is it takes uh, open city map data or OpenStreetMap data, downloads it, flattens it out into this 2D sort of map that it can then, with its algorithm, populate with like recognizing where the trees are, where the streets are, where the roads are, where the lampposts, where the buildings are. And with just like a click of a button, it starts to populate your space. So you can have authentic space if you wanted to do some type of, hide and seek or get to know the town that you're going to be staying in. Of course, these are all buildings that are preloaded. The prefabs are loaded. You could replace the prefabs if you want like it to be a different style. This is very much British. That's where the developer is. But you can then you can either do one or two things. You could replace all of the objects or key objects with actual models that you're creating either in Meshi or with Trio. I would say Trio. And then you have more sort of lifelike sort of a scenario there. Or really what you probably should be doing if it's a VR experience is reducing it, simplifying it, because you don't want people like walking for a mile to get from their hotel to the actual site. You want it to somehow be quicker or closer. And so you would want to simplify it. And that's where I would say like, I had a student who was interested in creating Stephansplatz, recreating it. You can ask Gemini or other chatbot to generate an image that gives you the layout, a simplified layout. Now, this one gives you sort of a practical idea, although it repeats some of the things. It gives you sort of a sense of like how it could look. But then you ask it for, okay, now I know which buildings it thinks are the most relevant. Ask it for prompts so then you could create images that you could then feed into your Trio or Tripo or some other type of 3D object generator. And so I did that, and I got sort of Stephansplatz Kirche. I got the Haushaus, the Palais Equitable, a U-Bahn station, and then just random other buildings to put in there. And if I show you, it did a really an excellent job at recreating those. So here's our Stephansplatz church. Maybe I'd run it probably once more through so I get a better roof on this. But otherwise, what is really important is that you get like sort of flat edges, low triangles. It doesn't look like Play-Doh. That was some other thing. This building I thought turned out pretty well. So you could be in VR and be close to it and still looks like a building. Here is another building. I thought this one came out pretty good. I'd probably have to run it through again for that. The U-Bahn station, pretty decent. Probably have to fix it a little bit with Blender. And then this just random house there. I'd have to put it in Blender and probably erase that little loose thing there. But I think, it's much flatter. It works much better in that sense. All right, so that would be what I would say if you were going to try to recreate an environment. That is probably a workflow I would suggest to do. Some platforms where to host it. Of course, we ended up using Unity and basically taking it offline because when you put it online, if it's just you hosting it, there's costs involved with that. So having it offline, having one person out of the headset or in a different space in their headset with the map, and then having the other person in the space, that worked really well to guide people with that info gap through the escape room. But there are also other platforms out there. Many of you probably know ThingLink. This is much more geared towards like 360 film. So if you're snapping photos, or like here, this is actually Blockade Labs. Skybox created this Italian villa, and there are a couple different things that I used to create this escape room. One, the narrative design to give you sort of those puzzles, those ideas. You can work with Gemini to kind of like curate that, how many you want, what's the order flow, what's the narration going to be like, what's the story. I use Suno AI to create the music to give it sort of an Italian flair. I'll show you in a second what it looks like. And then Nano Banana for images and puzzles that I was putting into the different hotspots that you use with ThingLink to get you so they have to kind of like figure out something or have some type of information that they have to work with. Of course, you can embed videos and other things like that too to augment that with different modalities. And of course, ThingLink itself has sort of these asset creators, the scenario builders. So if you put in all of your images and then ask it to create a scenario, it will like figure out with the AI what it would suggest and what kind of puzzles it would suggest. To get those types of features, though, you have to have like sort of a paid program. Either your institution is footing the bill, or you're paying sort of around about $25 a month. If you pay annually, I think it's something like 125, so it's like half off, but that's still a cost. I can show you the one that I made real quickly with that. And if we play it, you might hear the song. Let me see if I share again with sound. Here we go. Let me try to maybe if I just there we go. So it's gonna make the music. You can see I'll mute it. But it starts here, your first clue, and then it tells you, look somewhere else, look underneath the couch, there's clue two. And so it's guiding you around. You have to understand what it's saying, and then eventually get to unlock sort of the next steps as you're going along. You can, of course, link these rooms together so that you continue to kind of progress with a story if that's what you're wanting. And then I lost you guys from the other platform that I would recommend is Horizon, Meta Horizon Worlds. The only thing, a caveat with this is they tried to cancel this about 2 months ago. So that's always a problem with these things. But what makes this still palatable for many people is it has a larger user base. So you might get some if you're trying to sell sort of the platform. You could also like use that, but it's free, right? So it gives you some pretty powerful tools to play with, and it's free. And of course, they promised quite a bit with this. I have this little video here. I'm not going to play it, but basically, it's like selling the fact that, or selling the idea that you'll have like these AI conversational chatbots that you can put into these worlds and have these sort of lifelike conversations with them. And I tell you, that costs a lot of money. So if you have a free platform and a lot of people are using it, all of a sudden you're just like all these tokens that are being used are going somewhere. So they limited that. So you can create AI NPCs, but they are very limited. You have to kind of like have it so almost there's like set patterns that they'll speak, they'll react, right? But there's set patterns, and it's almost like you have to press buttons for it to be able to react in that way. But the kind of the cool thing is about the platform, and I'll show you here. Hold on a sec. How do I get this off? There. Hold on. Put it down here. Is that you're able those meshy and those other models you can very quickly import into these places. Here's a little AI avatar. You can quickly import into your space that you want, and this works on this. So this also helps if you need to have people experience it who don't want to wear the headset, right? It works in the headset. It also works on the web. It works on phones. That's just the way they set it up. And just the basic fact that it's free is really quite a sell for me still. And of course, there are all of those you can see on the right-hand side, all these ways that you can generate different aspects of your experience, whether it's the environment. You can actually, the only problem with generating environments, you can specify what it kind of looks like, but it's going to be an island. So it always has sort of like it ropes off sort of the area, and you might not like that. You might want it to be something else besides water that you're kind of surrounded in. Like I've recreated a Berlin Semperplatz, sort of an iconic space using sort of the workflow I had before. This is I was just throwing things together for today. but and it works really well. And I kind of made it sort of like you have to avoid crowds. So it's a hide and seek kind of thing. You're avoiding crowds, and the crowds are sort of these random blue people that you're working your way through the area. But it's pretty powerful. And again, I think the biggest selling point would be that it is free. I just want to make sure that we get here. The last one. So a little disappointed probably with if you're trying to use the Meta Horizon for the AI conversational chatbot. Well, there is a really established, long-running leader in the field. It's Convey, and this is my version of Samantha that I created. Uh, but they use real illusion avatars. I think this was actually an older avatar. They are very realistic looking, and you can basically you can set their mood, their personality. Let me just show you. I guess the platform is probably easier. You work with it through the web. And here's our little avatar here. You can choose a different avatar if you want. There's a bunch of them. You can build your own. Again, it's real illusion, so you can get really, really high fidelity, realistic looking characters. And then you give it sort of the description, the way they speak, the style. You give it some sample dialogues, what they might fall back on if they're just like waiting for a little bit, and also the personality. So you give it sort of like where in the five sort of key traits they are. I don't know if this fits from Samantha, but that's just like those are the defaults. And then for language, it uses 11 Labs. So if you know 11 Labs, they are the leader in creating multilingual voices that are realistic. And so that you can choose from a large host and for whatever language it is, right? So we have Italian here, sharp or accurate, clear Italian, a lot of different, and these might be people who've cloned their voices also, because 11 Labs allows you to clone your voice so you can hear yourself speaking if you need that. But yeah, so we have a lot of different choices. You can select up to 4 languages that your character will speak, right? And a lot of them are, not often spoken. So I think this is a really good platform for that. You can add custom pronunciation if you want them to say certain words a certain way. Like if you notice when you're speaking with them, that's a little off, or you want it to be more dialect. And then also it will record sort of new words. So if it doesn't have a word in its bank, it will record that, remember that, and then you can train it to say it a certain way or to react a certain way. This is really if you're talking about certain technical things, with your company or with your project, you might want to add that too. Knowledge banks, well, what do they know? You can have Gemini spit out a knowledge bank for like a baker, like what kind of like goods do they have? What are they trying to sell you? What's recent? And then you upload that, and you can also give it the constraint that it's really only wanting to speak about that topic. So it will cut off other directions, so you keep it on topic. The only problem with a lot of these conversation bots, and you'll also find this with chatbots for language learning, is that they often will drift very quickly to a level that's probably beyond what the speaker has, especially if it's like a beginner or intermediate that you're trying to use this for. So you want to really like keep the dialogue short. You want to keep the conversation short so they don't get that drift. And you also want to tell them with the constraints like that you want them to keep on topic. And there's guardrails, there's state of mind. Of course, if you're using this in a video game, you can set the state of mind. That state of mind can change for your character. So that's something like, what is the initial state? Are they upset that something's broken or something like that? And then maybe you can talk them out of that. So those are all interesting things. You can also, if you don't like all the coding that goes along with trying to import these guys into Unity or Unreal or some other game engine, there's also you can create experiences that live on the web that are also just Convey hosts them, and then you can have so many interactions. You can have your students go there and work with them. Here's the healthcare experience. If I just go here, it'll load for a second and it'll show you. It gives you sort of a space. You can upload spaces, but a lot of the spaces are good that they have. And then you just put your character there. They can interact with objects. They can have, some type of set pattern for the day. This is really for game design, but also for a lot of like corporate training, things like that. I'm not going to use my microphone because I need it for Zoom, but it will load it now, I think. Well, I don't want it to wait too long. Well, here it comes. And so this is what it kind of looks like. And then, if I had my mic on, I would start talking to the avatar. It would start talking back, and we could have like a little conversation. You can also test those out with your characters. So, like, say we want to take a video call. This could live on like a phone app or something like that. And she'll start talking, even though I don't have my mic on, so she's not going to hear anything I say. I could type things in here.
Ciao, venuto a Bologna. Ciao, benvenuto. Allo è una parola tedesca per dire ciao.
I hung up on her. It's too much for me. All right, so so those are some of the things that you can do with Convey. They are exportable, right? If you want them in your own experience, you can export them out there. This also costs, right? And it's all about tokens. If I were actually in charge of a language lab and I wanted to have an experience like this, I would probably have the AI live on like an M4, some type of Apple device, have it a smaller language model, and so have all of the queries or all of the interactions with the language model going to my own device, right? So it's not going off to a server farm or a data center and costing me a lot eventually. But having those devices, having like a small language model on a device that you could query and work with, that would be a really good solution so that you could still have like the conversations keep going. You wouldn't like hit paywalls or you wouldn't be spending a lot for these types of things. And that's very doable. All right, so yeah, so I think then I give it back to you, Samantha, as that kind of wraps up some of the technical stuff. There's of course a lot of other things out there. Google AI Studio, thumbs up, experiment with it, but that's it for me for now.
Yeah, thank you. And then, just wrapping up, and then I want to make sure we have time for the questions is whenever you choose to use VR or AI in your classroom, it is important to know that there are challenges, but also we have noticed positive outcomes, and I want to also highlight some of the best practices. Looking at the challenges, if you want to go to next slide. Of course, making sure that it is fully integrated in your curriculum, that you do have time for that, and that is something, as I said, based on a needs analysis. It's something that my students need, and it is something that adds to what they would not get if doing the same activity, with pen and paper. As Kevin showed, this does have a cost, and so like considering what are those constraints with cost and time, and looking for expertise. Like if you have a person like Kevin, or if you are someone who likes to learn more, and it does need that level of expertise, or if like as it was you have the ETS, that is important to have that kind of support. Also, always remembering that leaning on technology means that there are things that can sometimes not work. Like you need a very strong internet connection. We have had issues because sometimes it happened that one day OSU was updating the internet, was changing the internet. And so that created issues. And also the ever-changing platforms. So something that is available a month is not available following, or they are updating their terms and conditions. And so like there are so many things that are, we need to keep in mind. Also relying on students. Students tend not to be able to follow instructions, to forget what to do. If you're collecting data, as it happened to me, they forgot to record. So some of the data got lost, and always remembering of the possibility of cyber sickness, so providing an alternative. Then looking at the positive outcomes that we have noticed, that next slide, we noticed that students were really motivated. Although some of them had issues with technology, they said that they wanted to use more VR in the classroom, and they actually said they wanted to use technology in all of their classrooms. So that is really good for all of us. Next. We noticed a lot of problem-solving skills with students in VR, because the face-to-face group, whenever they had a doubt, they would either ask the instructor or show their maps. Students in VR did not have that luxury. And so they started communicating and talking more and finding alternative ways to avoid for the alarms to be set off. And we had very good follow-up discussions, both on the use of the language, on the escape rooms, and on the technology. They did learn how to use the headsets. So that was amazing. Looking at the best practices, I'd say always make sure to count for extra time. Many times you feel like, oh, I have 50 minutes, it's plenty of time. No, there is always that setup time and cleanup time, and students forgetting to put the, how to put the headset or whatever. Always provide a non-immersive alternative. Recycle as much as you can, right? If you have created already an escape room with a bedroom, well, then try to create, using the same model for another bedroom. Or if you have it in Italian, try to see if there is any way to adapt it to another language, for example. Whenever using VR, always make sure to do wellness checks, asking students to raise their hand if they're not feeling comfortable, and telling them that as soon as they start feeling dizzy, they need to stop, because the truth is that they love VR so much that they want to stay more. And so we gave them 10 minutes time, like they couldn't stay more than 10 minutes. Some of them eluded that and wanted to stay longer. Another rule that we put was the not walk and not standing. So we asked them to be seated at all times to avoid issues. Okay, so thank you so much. That is all.